Hello and welcome to the Eighth Man and the Fast Break News presentation of Selection Wednesday live reaction. So we just saw all the pools drawn for both college and club. We're here to talk all about the college bracket as well as to talk to some amazing players and coaches from across the country. Somehow we are only 17 days away from nationals, so we've got a lot of content coming down the pipe from a lot of the people you'll hear from today. I'm Ethan Sturm, and I'm going to be your host tonight. And I'm just going to introduce our panel very quickly. We have co-founder of Fast Break News, Naresh Adala, co-founder and volunteer coordinator for Fast Break News, Serena Montero, host of The Pod on the Eighth Man Podcast Network, Kellen Cupid, and Nick Jablonski, who is also kind enough to be producing alongside being one of our analysts for the night. So, guys, I want to get into it because we have a lot to talk about here. So, first reactions right off the bat, these pools are fresh on our plates. We're still kind of digesting them. Let's start with everyone's favorite thing to talk about when pools get drawn. What is your pool of death? I'll throw it to Kellen first.
Yeah, there's really like two pools that stick out to me. I'm kind of flip-flopping between which one I really think looks tougher to come out of. But for me, the two pools that kind of look like a pool of death are Pool E, the one that has UCLA, Michigan, Sam Houston State, and Brandeis. But then also Pool H is looking kind of shifty too. You got UVA, Virginia Quidditch Club, UTSA. So that's number 9 and number 3 in our eighth man rankings. And on top of that, you have UNC that was in the South Regional Finals. So both of those pools at first glance are looking really tough for me.
Serena, where are you going with pool of death?
I would definitely agree with Kellen with the first pool. Sorry, I need to pull that up on my screen really quick. What is that? D?
I think E is what you're looking for.
E. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. E. I agree with E. H also looks a little scary, but I'll throw in B just for funsies. It's not super death oriented, but it'll be fun. I think it's got some fun games across the board. A little parody there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, Nick. What's your pool of life in this field?
Yeah, Ethan. Pool A, you have any of those 4 teams could make it out. I have no doubt that that's the case. Depending on who Dark Snare brings, they could be the scariest pot 4 team by far. The other one that I think is a little sneaky is Pool G. I don't think any of Middlebury, Virginia Tech, and Rochester are necessarily beating Cal, but any of those 3 could take that second 2-win slot for sure.
Naresh, how about you? What are you seeing as a pool of life in this group of pools?
Absolutely. I agree with Nick. I think Pool G is very fighting for that secondary spot, as we've heard, where all you need is 2 wins and take away that Cal game, and those rest of the games are winnable for a lot of these teams. And I think just to switch it up, this pot of 7 is just something I haven't seen before, and I think it's fascinating the way they've tried to put it together, because I know 39 is an odd number and all of that. So I think for this pot of 7, with how it's structured, it can be really interesting to see a West Virginia, maybe a Florida State, potentially hopping in there and creating and making their opportunities.
Yeah. So I think we can kind of just jump right into it because that's where we're going to start because it's where the broadcast started. I'm kind of calling it the blob because it's not really a pool. It's a little too big to be a pool. 7 teams. Everybody's going to be playing 3 games except the University of Northern Colorado, who's going to be playing 4 games. Only way to balance and get everybody up to 3 games, just because of the odd number. The games have a pot component to them, though I'll 100% be honest. I'm not sure I fully understand the pot component because you have Texas, who's the pot 1 team in this pool. They have to play Harvard, the pot 2 team, and West Virginia, the pot 3 team, and then only get to play one of the 4, 5, 6, and 7 teams. But I think it's probably going to take some time to digest exactly the logistics of the thing. But Naresh already kind of gave his thoughts. Nick, what are your kind of thoughts on the blob, as it were?
I think it's interesting. I don't necessarily know why it had to happen. I think there were other alternatives out there. I think it will lead to some interesting matchups. I think that I'm excited to see Harvard UT. I know you're not necessarily Ethan right off the bat, but that is an incredible thing. But that could have been gotten with other things. But yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. I think it's very strange to make only one team play 4 games rather than trying to spread it out.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see why they did it with the pot 7 team, because I think if there was a team that, like, let's say they gave UT the 4 games, like, could UT manage 4 games on Saturday? Yes. Would it be particularly fair that UT has to play 33% more games than every other like competitive team at nationals on day 1? Probably not. Serena, what are your thoughts on the blob?
Yeah, I agree that it's kind of, I think it's a little unfair to Texas just overall in terms of like the seeds that they have to play. I don't really have anything much to add. I also think they could have done it a little bit better in terms of just like the formatting of like the pots or the pools. But I'm excited to, I mean, I don't know. I think 4 games could be looked at for like University of Northern Colorado as a bad thing, but I also think that it gives them another chance to win a game, like take a game off of another team. I know they're not ranked super highly, so I think that actually might give them a better chance at coming out somewhere where we don't expect.
Yeah, and our understanding is that it's just 2 wins get you into bracket. That's at least how it was explained to us on the broadcast. So technically, University of Northern Colorado has more opportunities to get those 2 wins than anybody else in the field. So you can definitely take that as a win.
Right.
But obviously the extra game. Kellen, I have a question for you. Do you think that being in this blob helps Texas' chances of ending up winning this thing, or do you think it's ultimately indifferent because that's not where Texas's destiny is going to be decided?
I mean, honestly, I don't think this blob will hurt Texas too much. Like, Texas is just talent-wise so clear and far away from most of the rest of this blob that I don't think that it's really going to impact them too much. And on top of that, I've seen that in the last couple of tournaments, their depth has really started to show as well. So I know that, we're kind of talking about whether or not it's going to be disadvantageous, being that they have to play, a pot 2 and a pot 3 seed. But I think that the fact that they have all this depth and they just already have so much talent to start with, it's not necessarily fair, like we were saying, but I do think that they're going to be able to manage and still be able to go toe-to-toe with any other team in the country on day 2.
Yeah. Naresh, this is obviously, there's a lot of teams in here. It's harder to unpack 7 teams at the same time than it is 4. You've played this Pittsburgh team. I know they gave you a hard game. What teams do you think are kind of lurking, in this blob that could potentially trip up one of the higher seeds?
It's really funny you said that, because Pitt was going to be the first team that I brought up, because if you look at the way that they scheduled the games, Pittsburgh avoids Texas and Harvard, and they're.
It does seem odd. I'm not going to lie. Sorry, I didn't want to throw it in.
No, that's all right. I mean, I think it's valid criticism, or it's just a critique, right? It's one of those things. They got lucky. It happens, but Pitt, I think, really lucked out. And going back into your previous question about who benefits from their pod or their pool, I think Pitt's a clear winner here, where their toughest game most likely will come against West Virginia, a team that they're very comfortable with in terms of recognition, right? They played them last week, where they did lose, but again, it's a conference game where they've seen each other so many times. And when Rutgers and when I was at Cav Cup about a month and a half ago, that Pitt versus West Virginia game was electric. It was next goal wins. There were a couple of stops. It was just such a great game. And so just looking at this pod, I think Pitt has a very, very sneaky chance of being in that upper echelon to make it to day 2, just because of the schedule they've been given. But in terms of any of these teams potentially being a threat to a Texas or a Harvard, I don't know if any of the teams there are at that level at this point. Maybe West Virginia, but I've heard, I don't know yet, but I've heard that West Virginia might have some roster issues, and who they're taking and all. But again, it's one of those things where obviously we want all these teams at full roster, and that would be different. But as of right now, I don't see any teams posing a threat, but Pitt is the team to watch here.
Yeah, and of course, West Virginia also doesn't play Harvard, so if they were going to trip someone up higher, it would have to be UT, which is obviously the taller order of the 2. It is really interesting you mentioned Pitt, though. The fact that they basically got scheduled on Saturday like an elite Pot 1 team is something I think will get talked about more as we get closer to nationals, because that is an odd decision. Nick, real quick, the Harvard-Texas game, take us through it. What do you think is going to happen in that one?
I think both teams, I think Texas is by far and away the favorite for sure. But I think Harvard has a very smart coaching staff that does know how to work up to the level of the team they're playing and install a good process for that game. But also, if I don't know what time they're at, right? If Harvard already has their 2 wins locked away, it's totally possible that they just, if both teams have their 2 wins locked away, it's totally possible that Harvard just throws it in, right? They're definitely not as deep a team as Texas. And if they're already set up for bracket, they might not make the most effort in that game. Leo's going to hate me saying that, though, for sure.
There's, at least by 8th man rankings, that's currently one of the 2 top 10 matchups we will get on Saturday. And you'll have to wait all the way to the last pool before we talk about the other one. So we've got a long way to go. But let's move on from the blob. Let's bring in our first guest. She is the coach and co-captain of this UT team we've been talking so much about, Carolyn Tao. Carolyn, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I guess first off, right off the bat, I mean, first off, we're kind of all talking. You've probably heard about kind of all talking favorites, not only for this blob, but also for the tournament. So how have you guys been kind of managing? How have you guys been kind of managing expectations? A place you've been many times, a place you've been many times, but obviously your roster itself has been.
I mean, with our roster, we only have like a small handful of players who were on that 2019. So a lot of it is new players. So it's really just getting them staying focused on what our end goal is obviously making it to nationals, securing our spot and everything. So we've made it this far, but we've got to make everybody still focus on our end goal as a team and working independently on their own skills, but also what we need as a team.
So you guys traveled out of region this season to Blue Jay Classic. Honestly, pretty rare for Texas. I think maybe a trip to New Mexico, like way back in World Cup 6 time, might have been the last time UT left Texas or left the Southwest at least, for a tournament that wasn't nationals. What did you gain from that experience and a chance to play a team like Creighton?
Yeah, it was a good opportunity for us. We weren't really planning on going out of state just yet, but we weren't sure about if A&M was going to have their Diamond Cup, and Creighton's coach Curtis reached out to me early fall semester about it, asking if we were interested in coming out. So we already had it on our radar, planned for it to go out in November, and it was good because it gave us a different competition outside of the Southwest teams. Because I mean, we only play the same like 5-6 teams every tournament down there.
Hey, Caroline. So obviously we know the Davis Rose, the Jack Wangs, and Casey Beavers of the world. And obviously, of course, we know you at how strong this Texas team is. Who are some of the notable players who aren't, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Who are some of the lesser known players from your team that will be the X factor for nationals?
Yeah. I mean, we've got Kaiser Polson, who played Austin Quidditch pre-COVID, and so now he's playing for Texas. Doing a really amazing job beating. Then we've got some of our rookies, Daniel Swathy, Will Spencer, Will Christo. A lot of them have been significantly have made a lot of improvements since the fall, because Blue Jay was our last tournament for the fall, and then we picked up with regionals, and people noticed the improvement. Toby's been really good. He'll be a good one.
Awesome. So you kind of mentioned those same Southwest teams that you play over and over again. Obviously, only 3 of you guys are making the trip this year. But what do you expect to see from UTSA and Sam Houston at nationals this year?
From both of them, I expect the same thing that we've been seeing so far at regionals and then at Alamo Cup just the other weekend. Both teams have been coming hard, hitting hard, playing harder, have been improving a lot since the fall semester. They're definitely fighting for their chance and fighting for every game.
Awesome. Well, Karen, we won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to seeing my team playing you guys at Saturday Nationals. Best of luck.
You too. Bye.
Alrighty, so we will now jump into our standard 4-team pools, something everyone's much more familiar with. Again, it seems like 2 wins get you out of a pool. I assume that includes pools that go 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 0-3, but we'll probably have to wait for the article from USQ, which I think might be up if people want to check it out. I can't click it right now, but might explain more on that subject. But yeah, University of Florida, Blue Jay, Quidditch, BU, and Dark Snare. We call this the pool of life. Nick, do you want to elaborate a little bit more now that we have time to talk about it?
Yeah. So the big thing about a pool of life, right, is that teams that maybe necessarily didn't have as strong a chance of making bracket now all seem to have a chance. And realistically, all 4 of these teams have an opportunity to make it. I mean, I know that Florida definitely has a target painted on them as the weakest 1 seed, which hopefully they come out and prove us wrong. But that was the case there. Blue Jay Quidditch is a very strong team in the Great Lakes Midwest region. And BU has had a really rough go of it this whole year, but is a team that shouldn't be messed with. They played Tufts very close at Oktoberfest. They have gotten wins over notable teams such as RPI, and they have a very, very strong beater core. And then Dark Snare is a bunch of players who had incredible experience over the summer in MLQ playing for Rochester. And definitely, if they bring the strongest roster they possibly can, a very, very scary Pot 4 team.
Yes, Serena, you've had a chance to play with, against, and alongside the BU beater core. So what do you think they bring to the table here?
I think the BU beater core is super solid. They have a few years of experience under their belt. I know with the whole pandemic and loss of like a season and a half or 2 seasons, there haven't been a ton of like recurring appearances at nationals for a lot of these players, but I think the BU core is pretty disciplined. They're smart. They're gonna kind of be able to read and handle whatever kind of comes their way. I'm not super up on beaters for all of these other teams. However, I will say that in terms of just like experience at a higher level, I know that their BU's main 2, Noyes Ozra and Angela Song, have had some MLQ experience under their belt as of last summer, which I think is really going to propel them and set them up pretty well for their pool for sure.
So obviously we need to talk about the top team here in Florida, as undefeated on the season, South Region champions. They beat a UNC team in the finals that came down from the Mid-Atlantic. Kellen, what have you seen from this team so far this season as they kind of try to prove themselves as a top 1 team here?
I like Florida, and I think that they're a good team, and obviously, best in the South, winning the South Regional. My only thing is that when looking at this team, like, of course, in the South, they have a bit of a weaker strength of schedule, right? So they're not playing as many or as diverse teams as a lot of the other teams in this pool would be. Honestly, you could even say that out of all the pot 1 or the pot 1 team or pool 1 teams, pot 1 teams, yeah, sorry, but out of all the pot 1 teams, Florida might have the best chance of not making it to the day 2 out of the rest of them. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch this pool.
Yeah, I would argue on the other side though that like if Florida deserves to be a pot 1 team, which they claim and which I'm fully in support of. At the same time, there hasn't been a South team to make the Sweet 16 of a South College since World Cup 5. But if they want to do it, this is a pool to do it in, right? Blue Jay Quidditch. So Creighton and Blue Jay, 1 program, basically made mid-season transfers. They put all of their strengths, including the Manny, all up onto the Creighton team. That's not going to make this a weak Blue Jay Quidditch team by any means, but it is purposely meant to not have the best 21 players in the program on it, basically, is my understanding from talking to their coach. And then you've got a BU team who's, a solid team, but definitely had some struggles this season. And then Dark Snare, which, the roster's been a mixed bag. But talking about the Dark Snare team, I think Nick said that depending on the way the roster falls, could be one of the tougher pot 4 teams around. Naresh, what do you think this Dark Snare team could bring?
Absolutely. So Dark Snare, I mean, we saw him a few weeks ago at Knights Cup where just the people on their team, they have a couple of new rookies. I apologize, I don't know their names, but number 99 on Dark Snare absolutely balled out. First year player, very physical, loves to fast break. And combine that with Mitch Vargas, Josh Anglam, and Avery Oliver. It's just great, great quaffle depth. Now the question is, do they have the beaters to potentially keep up with these other teams in their pool and just keep going forward in just overall nationals? But I think their quaffle depth is phenomenal, and it's going to be really exciting to watch them play. And hopefully they can put out their full roster, because I think with this team and how they can hit, they'll provide a lot. They'll be a lot more physical than teams expect them to be.
Yep. Yeah, and that's will be interesting, because what I saw from the South game was not that much physicality overall. That said, Florida plays a very disciplined 2-2, and they like to fast break off of it. That's something that I know and love very much. It's definitely a recipe for success, but you do have to have the better beaters in those cases. So I think really beating is going to be the story here. Whether Dark Snare can compete with less of it, whether BU can take over games because they have it, and whether Florida's can stand up to these other teams. So let's jump into our next interview now. We're going to bring in the Florida coach, Nick Zukowski. Nick, thanks so much for coming on and joining us tonight.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So I think you might have been hearing me talk a little bit about when we were watching film of South Regionals, maybe not as much physicality as we were seeing in some of the other regions. So how do you prep your team for that coming into nationals? That this is going to be a very physical game now. When you drive in the lane, you are going to get hit. Those kind of opportunities aren't there in the same way.
So the biggest thing on that is just the way we practice. We're incredibly physical at practice. We are not worried about a team being more physical than us. That's rule one. You got to match physicality and hustle. Those are the things you can always control. So that's rule one of coaching.
For sure. So, you guys have played kind of one of the lowest numbers of official games amongst the Pot 1 teams. So how has that impacted your preparation? I've definitely been on teams who, you get 3-4 months of, only being able to practice and not being able to, hit another team, and starts to kind of wear. So kind of how have you balanced that throughout the season?
So we don't have the highest number of official games, but we also have, I think, 4-ish games against club teams that don't go into those standings. So that helps a lot. It's nice to play a club teams to get some balance and stay competitive in those games. There are also a lot of unofficial games to start the season in the South. But so we basically, since regionals, we've only played ourselves. But I don't know. I think it's still, we get better pretty often by playing ourselves unless we have to travel pretty far, I feel like. And that was really hard, especially coming back off of COVID. It's hard to go that far to travel to teams we don't see very often.
Yeah. So, people probably don't know a ton of the stars on your team, but I mean, turning on your film, watching players like Fields and Simon, Frank, they really do stand out. So if you were going to, sell us on some of the kind of the stars on your team, kind of what would be your pitch on some of them?
Yeah, so if we're going to go over those three, I think Betsy Frank is truly quite elite. She's a very, very good defender. That's really picked up in the last year since two-arm tackling. She can take just about anyone down, and she pretty much has the entire tool set on offense. She's got the little mid-range shot. She's got amazing spacing. And then you look at someone else. Sander Simon is just when he joined, he didn't have any discipline, but he had the speed, and that's now actually added some things to the game. He has great speed. He's got a very good mid-range shot, one of the best I've seen. He puts so much pace on the ball. There's just so little you can do. And then Brandon Fields, as we talked about, he's just a monster on defense. He just doesn't let people past him. Maybe to a fault sometimes, but he just does not have the ability to let someone go past him. It doesn't really matter to him. Like it's pride.
And any other players that you think are going to be X factors for your team going into nationals?
Yeah, I think someone that doesn't pop on film all the time would be our starting female leader. She's very good. Kate Deffaback. She's been playing for 4 years. She's stayed through for 2 years, played one nationals as a freshman only, but she got some good experience there playing a bunch of different teams. But I think she'll probably be the X factor for the entire tournament for us.
Yeah, I mean, you heard how much we were talking about beating when it comes to this pool, so it'll definitely be good to see her play. I think, it kind of goes without saying that, there is a certain level of disrespect, earned or not, when it comes to talking about the South region. How do you guys kind of balance that? Do you guys use it as a motivator, as a bulletin board material? Do you just kind of put it aside and you don't focus on it at all, or how do you guys kind of treat it as a team?
I mean, I use it as bulletin board material a little bit, but to be honest, these people don't. Most of the team doesn't hear any of that. They don't.
Right.
They're not involved in the forums where all that information is kind of out there. And it's been 2 years since anyone's seen us. I think the UF teams last year didn't happen in the 2 years before. I think they would have done quite well at nationals and kind of gotten that reputation off of us. So we're kind of holding that on our back to show that we lost 2 really good years for UF.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys do get the chance to show it. I'm looking forward to watching you guys at nationals. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck in a couple weeks.
Thanks.
All right, let's run along here to Pool B, where the Midwest and Great Lakes regional champions are there, but they are one team. They're number 2, Creighton, alongside RPI, Michigan State, and Utah. So I guess okay, I'll throw this question first to Kellen. How regimented do you think this group is? Do you think it really, is this a group where there's not that many opportunities for upsets at any tier?
Well, the thing with this group is that, of course, Creighton is the undoubted favorite, right? They're just an incredible team, top to bottom. But when you look at especially the RPIs, the Michigan States, their records aren't the strongest in the country, but they do have a lot of upside potential. Especially if you look at RPI, for example. RPI all season long, save for one team, has only been able to beat D2 MQC teams, right? But then whenever they go up against Harvard, one of our best teams in our rankings, they've been performing pretty well. Like we've mentioned with a lot of previous teams, it depends on, health, how many players go, things like that. But I think that although Creighton are the undoubted favorite, there is a good amount of upset potential in this group.
Right. Cool. Naresh, how do you feel about the way this group breaks down?
Yeah, I think this is Creighton's pool. I don't see it being close. I think Creighton, obviously we haven't seen them play in a while, but Creighton, just watching, we played them last year, just watching how they were able to run on pretty much any team they wanted at will, and the athleticism that they bring to the sport, honestly, is just pretty unmatched. And so I think RPI, what they can really do well is play a very smart, disciplined defense, which we know we're going to get. And so I think it's going to end up being, if RPI, they have to pretty much play a perfect game to keep this game close, I think. And going from there is just whoever catches a snitch and all of that, because I think putting Joe Goulet versus Steven Tremple is a pretty good secret matchup. So that obviously becomes a thing, one of some of the nuances. I think the biggest thing is you got to stop Creighton from running, and I think RPI definitely has the chasers to do so. It's just going to be able to see if the athleticism might just be a bit too much for RPI to handle. But hopefully it's a good game. That's what I want.
Yeah. Nick, Kellen was talking about RPI kind of having the struggling to get those wins early in the season. They play Mark with really, really aggressively placed beaters all of fall semester. Spring semester, they break out a zone and they play their beaters less aggressively. Suddenly, they hold UVA to 10 points in the 20-minute secret floor. They beat Harvard twice, etc. Do you think this is enough of a change where they can, make more waves than maybe we were giving them credit for previously in the season?
Yes and no. I mean, Creighton's a fast-breaking team. That is their powerhouse all the way through and through. That is what they want to get out and do. They want to run. And a 2-2 with conservative beaters doesn't stop a fast-breaking team if you can't set it up. So I think that's part of it. That's going to be a problem for that RPI team. I do think that their 2-2 has potential to help them go a little bit further. But it's not the most disciplined 2-2 we've seen. There are a lot of holes that can be exploited, especially by teams that are comfortable breaking down 2-2s. And as they reach more teams that can pass and catch throughout all 4 quaffle positions, you're going to see those holes start to materialize, I think.
Then let me rephrase the question. Does it heighten their floor and make them less at risk of upset from below them, even if it doesn't give them a better chance of beating Creighton?
Yes. I mean, they are a team that I think is still susceptible to playing closer games than before, but it's definitely a 2-2 helps. It's that simple. In the modern Quidditch meta, if you play a 2-2, it's beneficial.
Yeah, and I did put Nick on the spot there because he is playing the Massachusetts Quiz Conference Championships against them on Saturday. But yeah, Naresh, we talked a lot about RPI and Creighton, but if someone's going to knock one of them out of this tournament, it's most likely going to be this Michigan State team. So what have you seen from them this season?
Absolutely. So Michigan State is one of those teams where they have a storied history. A couple of years ago, they were always competing in the Great Lakes region, and now they're back again. And even though they lost to Kansas, obviously a perennial powerhouse, we always rank Kansas high. We know what this Kansas team can give us. They held them. The score was 100-90 and quaffle points. And so if you're able to hold a Kansas team to 90 quaffle points, Michigan State, there's something there. And I think this team is in a spot to potentially upset for that number 2 spot in that region, or in this pool. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Naresh said, right? Like we're mentioning the upset potentials of some of the teams in this group, but Michigan State, one of the things that they have is a really smart plan of attack. Usually when they're approaching games, right? Their ball movement is very, very strong, and they score a lot of their goals from all over the pitch. So they're one of the teams that if you're not really prepared for them, they could kind of catch you off guard.
No, for sure. And then, bringing up at the bottom is the hometown team as seen in the reveal video, Utah. Nick, do you think Utah's going to be able to give anybody in this group a scare?
They're a combination of both Utah and Utah State. And I think they have an opportunity to, but I think really it's going to be tough. I think they could beat Michigan State for sure. I think RPI's discipline, though, right, and their physicality is going to make it very difficult for Utah to pull an upset over them. And I think Creighton's just going to run.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's go on to talking to that Creighton team that, as I said, is going to be looking to run. So, guys, thanks so much for taking the time for us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. What's up, everyone?
That's awesome. So I'll kind of go right for you guys. Obviously had a very dominant fall semester. Really only the hiccups coming against UT, the number one team. But you haven't played an official game in almost half a year. So how do you make sure that you're going to come out strong game one of nationals, kind of 5 months removed?
So I think just quick intros. I think most people know us, but I'm Curtis. I'm the head coach. This is Senna Morimoto, one of my captains, and Darius, my other captain, both seniors. I would say, we haven't played a game in 5 months, an official game. The brilliance of having a 2-team program is we basically get to play guns a-blazing every weekend and kind of model that type of intensity on a regular basis. So for us, we have not played anyone officially in 5 months, but we also get to play the number 13 team in the country every weekend, and we kind of model it that way where we play as ourselves. It's ideal for both of us, and we are also trying to focus a lot on the fitness piece. We've played 40% of this field in the fall semester, and so for us, we kind of know a little bit about every region at this point. So now it's just about putting it together and making sure we're fit enough to get all the way through, because as everyone says, we are that run and gun team. So we will run you into the ground.
Yeah, I apologize for the lack of introductions. I knew Curtis was grabbing a couple of you, and I didn't have a camera view on who was actually there. I didn't want to be wrong. I'm going to throw it to Kellen for the next question.
So, hey guys, how you doing? Now, Curtis, you just mentioned that y'all have pretty much played about 40% of the field already. Now, I know that would give you a strategic advantage. You kind of get to see the rest of the field, see what they play like. But don't you also feel as though it goes vice versa? How do you guys want to counteract the way that now the rest of the country knows your game because you've played so many different types of opponents?
So Ethan has played with or near me for 11 years now. I play very simple Quidditch. I will find the athletes and we will run and gun, and you will beat me at my game or you won't beat me. And that's how we played. There's nothing really crazy or strategic about us. Nick laughs because Tufts literally came at us and he walked up to me after the game and goes, "You guys love the fast break." And I was like, that would be us, yes. So, I mean, do what you do well and get good at it.
So then let me fire back at you there, because one could argue that UT did beat you in your own game in what was a
They did.
very chaotic couple of games. So
It was a
you're
dodgeball
obviously,
match.
yeah, your goal here is not to beat the rest of the field. Your goal here is to beat UT. So how do you feel about your ability that now you're going to need to be the ones making changes going into a potential matchup late on Sunday?
Yeah, I think for us, it's that last game of the season was kind of like icing on the cake. I think I said this on AQD. We were for sure not there 100%. I know Caroline was not happy to see us come on there and not have Darian, not have Laura, not have Novak. We did make one roster move from JV to varsity as well that will obviously elevate the team a little bit more. So the pieces were not all there, and that's no excuse. We should be ready for those games when we set them up. And honestly, it was a great humbling experience too. I mean, if UT would have come up here, if we would have ran through that as well, I don't know if I could control the egos on this team at that point. So it's been a great opportunity for us to sit back, and then every last third of practice now, that last 30 minutes is a solid fitness session. So.
Now, Darian, Curtis mentioned the injury that had kept you out of Blue Jay Classic. So how's the recovery been for that, and are you feeling 100% coming into Nationals?
Locked in, ready to go. Leave it at that. Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I think you guys are at practice right now, so I'll let you guys get back to it.
We finished. It started as soon as practice ended, so we were pretty excited about that. The whole team sat and watched, and we are actually more pumped for Blue Jay than even for ourselves because we're feeling a 6-0 day one for both teams.
Awesome. Well, best of luck, guys, in accomplishing that, and we will see you in a couple weeks in Nationals. All righty, let's roll on to Pool C. This one topped off by the team that Nick has recently mentioned does coach, and that me and Serena are both alumnus of, the Tufts University. Number 4 currently in the 8th man rankings, alongside Kansas, Marquette, Bowling Green. The rest of the pool is actually kind of geographically pretty clustered overall. So let's kind of get right into it. Kellen, you've had a chance to watch this Kansas team. What kind of trouble do you think they could potentially give Tufts, if any?
Well, the thing with this Kansas team is that they have some solid pieces, and I really think that the way that they control the pace of the game really gives them a shot against any team in the country, really. But when it comes to Tufts in particular, I just think that the way that their beaters just control every aspect of the game, and then they have star players like Jordan and Henry Bear Benson in the chaser game. It's just I think it might be a little bit too much for this Kansas team to overcome.
Yeah. So Serena, I can't put Nick on the spot because he's coaching the team, but you're no longer associated. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this Tufts team and what they bring to the table this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Kellen already mentioned some of the star Quaffle players with Henry Bear Benson and Jordan Smiley. As we all know, HBB is also an elite seeker, which is going to give Tufts that edge as well. And I think in this pool, but as well, like any pool that they were placed in, any 1C that they were placed against, I think the Tufts beater core is super deep, super strong, can hang with anybody. I think Nick and like the Tufts coaching staff have like prepared them very well for a lot of different looks. And I was watching a little bit of Kansas film the other day. And I really think the advantage of the Tufts going to the offense now and like the Quaffle game, the Tufts Quaffle game against the Kansas Quaffle game is Tufts is super patient. And Kansas, like if they give them like 1 or 2 looks, like bring a Quaffle in, bring it back, like whatever. I think the Kansas defense can't really hang with that. They're not super disciplined on defense. I think they can be kind of broken down easily by a team who's patient, who knows what to look for, and how to kind of create those holes. But yeah, I think overall, like combination of the two, but I'm a little biased. The beating core is going to get Tufts through this pool, no problem.
So since somebody has to be the negative Nancy here on the subject. Here's what I'll say about Tufts. This Tufts team is a very strong team. They play in the MQC, and they're the best team in the MQC. I don't think they'll have particular trouble with RPI in the finals of the MQC next Saturday. The MQC is full of teams that are technically sound and play smart and play accurate. What it's not full of is super, super athletic teams. Not necessarily as Pool C either, but this Tufts team's aspirations are not just getting through Pool C. When they saw an athletic team at Rutgers and not Nerf, they did not win that game. And I think it's something they're going to need to be prepared to see. But yeah, so Naresh, you've obviously played this Tufts team as well. Kind of how do you think things might break down for them at nationals?
For sure. I mean, this Tufts team, I remember for specifically Rutgers, just for a bit, Tufts was always going to, like, we hated playing Tufts because we knew we were in for just such a disciplined game where we had to play really smart in order to be able to break down their defense. And their beaters are phenomenal. They're super smart. Getting control off of them the first time we played them was practically impossible. Real quick, though, bouncing off of what Serena was saying, their offense is super patient and amazing, and just really everyone knows what they're doing. But if you let them run, Jacob Carulli will run all over you. And even though he's a first-year player, huge fan of Carulli. And I think with their beaters, with their overall depth as a whole, I think you're going to see some stars shining on the national stage. And I think Carulli's one of them. And overall, I think this is Tufts' pool. I think Kansas will be a fun game. It'll be a good game. But I think Tufts takes this. Marquette, they have a bunch of seniors on that team, so they'll have a lot more experience. But based on some of the Marquette's previous game scores, I think this is Tufts' pool, and rightfully so. I think they're very well coached and very well disciplined.
So along with those two Midwest teams that Naresh mentioned, there's also a Bowling Green team. Not saying the Bowling Green's going to challenge Tufts. The two programs actually do have a long nationals history. Serena, do you think they can make any waves against either of those two Midwest teams that they're going to be seeing?
Oh, can Bowling Green?
Yeah.
As we were mentioning before, like kind of what Tufts lacks in their competition is like the physicality and the athleticism, like against competition. Bowling Green doesn't really bring that, honestly. Like they're not the fastest team. They're not, they're not scoring off of like only fast breaks. They're not looking to run. They have Ray Barnes at beater, she is an incredible beater. And she's a super standout player, and I'm really excited to see her play. And I think she can definitely hang with any of the beaters on those other two, the Kansas Marquette teams. I don't think there's going to be any huge upsets there, though.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And while October 2nd is basically a decade back in terms of college Quidditch, they did lose to Marquette 175-30 on that day. So that is quite the hill to climb in just 2 months. So we talked a lot about that Tufts team. Let's bring in one of their captains, or one of their co-captains, Jordan. Jordan, thanks for coming on tonight.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So one thing you kind of heard some of us mentioning is, you guys have played a lot of your games in the MQC this year. You haven't traveled a ton. You did go down to Oktoberfest, but unfortunately you ended up playing BU there as well, and you did get to play Rutgers. So how are you guys kind of prepping for, more out of region teams besides Creighton and Rutgers who you played in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, we're just doing, Nick is really good at like looking at film, and we can see what other teams have done against teams that we haven't played and plan for them as much as we can ahead of time. One of the best things that our team has, as you guys have mentioned, is our patience. We're really good at passing, and I think what we may lack in experience playing against other teams, we can make up for in just doing as much as we can to plan and prepare.
So right before COVID hits, obviously, you guys had a very strong team. You lost actually to Kellen's NYU team in the regional finals in a competitive game that was played in a miserable rainstorm. But regardless, you guys had a very strong team with a very strong senior class. Then it just kind of goes into COVID for 2 years. What was it kind of like internally to, kind of keep the team together, build up through recruitment, all kind of with this? Because I know Tufts basically still had to be wearing masks at their games outdoors all the way through, I think, October, November. No, later, right? It just happened? You guys just got rid of that? So
yeah, just
so can you take us through a little bit of the last 2 years and kind of maintaining and developing the program?
Yeah, so I mean, during COVID, when we couldn't play, we obviously did as much as we can to keep the social aspect of our team together, because that's really important for maintaining the program. we did Zooms and as much as we could. And then as soon as we were able to get back playing, we went to those, like, you know, the student org fair and tried to recruit. We just did another recruitment, you know, push at the beginning of this semester. And we got a few new players that will be coming with us to nationals. So it's just, you know, we did graduate 2 huge classes right before, but we also have some older players that are still left. Yeah, a lot of our seniors and juniors, and we are just, you know, doing our best to get new freshmen. We do have new freshmen who are doing amazingly well and picking up really fast. And I'm really proud of our entire team of how we're doing. And I think we're setting up the program to do well this year and in future years as well.
So obviously this is an analyst test that knows a lot about your teams, and we've mentioned a lot of names, but are there any names that you think could be difference makers come nationals that maybe won't get mentioned as much as, you know, the big names on your team?
Yeah, I mean, you guys already mentioned like Henry and Brooke and Karuli. Sophie Gerard is another really, really, really strong beater on our team. She's amazing. She kind of gets overshadowed by Brooke a lot, but she deserves just as much recognition. On the quaffle game, we have Jacob Brenner, we have Chris Labetti, Joe Schmidt, so many names. You know, we have a lot of depth, I think, both in our beater, like, you know, really strongly in our beater game, but also in our quaffle game. And a lot of these names, like, that don't get talked about a lot are really going to go to nationals and prove that they are worth being recognized as well.
Awesome. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Safe travels to nationals, and we'll see you there. Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving right along, we are hitting the halfway point of the non-blob pools. We're in Pool D, headed by Maryland, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Champions, as they always seem to be, with Brown, Illinois, and Emerson. It seems like that, you know, this might be another very regimented pool, but I know Serena potentially had a bit of a hot take here coming into Pool D, so I'll give the floor to her.
I absolutely have the hottest of takes, which is that I think we could potentially see an upset here with Brown over Maryland. It is a hot take there. I said it. I mean, Brown has existed in the MQC, has been very dominant in the MQC, even took a game off of Harvard, if I am correct. Sure. Yeah, so, and, you know, Harvard is a very highly ranked team as well. I think Brown is not well known at all outside of the MQC. They're a very newly official team. So I think a lot of teams outside the region are not going to see them coming, although they do have Emerson in their pool, which is in Massachusetts in the MQC. But other than that, I think they could definitely be a surprise team. They've got some good physicality. I mean, their star is Andrew Steinberg. Obviously he's got crazy energy, like just physicality, go. I think he's going to be the one to carry this team to any and all of the wins that they get in their pool. So yeah. Yeah,
of course I have to agree with you there. But you know, Steinberg's a star, but TJ is even more of a star. Kellen, what do you think this Maryland team is going to be able to do at nationals this year and in this pool?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this Brown team too, but man, oh man, this Maryland team. This is a team with arguably one of the best chasers in the country and arguably one of the best beaters in the country, right? And Heather Farnan and TJ Generate. So, of course, whenever those two are on the pitch, they can go toe-to-toe with literally any single team in the country. The only issue is their depth, right? And that's been the storyline the whole year. That Maryland, their performance usually directly correlates to the amount of people they're able to bring with them to the tournament. So hopefully for nationals, they're able to come with as full of a roster as possible. But and if they do, I think it's very, very hard for them to not walk out of this pool going 3-0, especially with how much talent they have on the top end.
Yeah. And I mean, what's kind of odd about the Knights Cup performance, because you mentioned, you know, the endurance and everything, is that they dropped the first game of the morning to Harvard in a very, very long game. They then came back and played all day and won back-to-back games, ending with the game against Rutgers. So Naresh, I mean, my team's played them, your team's played them, but what did Maryland show you at Knights Cup? Did you come away more impressed with that team or less impressed with that team from that tournament?
You think you have a game plan until you get smacked in the face. And I think TJ Jenner's a bona fide star. There's not anything else that I can say about TJ. Absolute sweetheart off the field, absolute menace on the field, just absolute star. Great seeker, great chaser. He had 7 goals against Rutgers single-handedly against in just by himself, and it was just he's a star, dude. And I apologize, shouldn't have said dude, but he's a star. He's an absolute star, and I get happy talking about TJ because he's phenomenal. But again, that's not a takeaway from the other players on that Maryland team, where I think a lot of people forget because Maryland is such a powerhouse name. They're such a big brand, but majority of their team is super young. Majority of their team, Sir Mudd, Jamil, Noah Jagdman, Mike Concepcion, Katie Glendon, all of these player names that I've just met, I can keep going. Like all of these names, for the most part, are first-year players. They have Brandon Russell, who is Brandon Randall, number 29 on Maryland, grad school player from the Michigan State program that we talked about. Absolute monster. He's very good. And so they have pieces, and if a team's not ready, they will absolutely look to run on everyone. So I'm very excited about this team, very excited about Maryland, love them. And we haven't even talked about Jared Knipple yet. So obviously that shows how deep this team, in terms of their experience, they are. But obviously, like Kellen was saying, as everyone else has said, overall, their roster depth and their sometimes wishy-washy fundamentals can make them a susceptible team. But in this pool, I think they should go 3-0, but the Brown game should be fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's for sure true, and it'll be interesting to see when in the day they end up running into Brown. Nick, we've talked a lot about the top 2 teams, University of Illinois and Emerson, bring up the bottom of this pool. Do you see either of those teams being able to hang with Brown? Obviously, we have direct comparisons for Brown and Emerson, but do you think we see anything from Illinois?
I mean, honestly, I think Emerson could beat Illinois. And I think Emerson could beat Brown if they hit them at the right time. I do. This is a team that's very talented, that hasn't put it all together yet. They're very, very young, coached by a great coach in Kieran Collier. I don't necessarily think they beat both of those teams, but getting a win over one of them is totally possible. We've all seen what late in the day games, when teams are coming off long rests and things happen. I mean, QCB was one of the top favorites going into nationals years ago and dropped a game to Long Beach. Not to say the Long Beach didn't play a phenomenal game, but that shouldn't have happened that year. And that's the stuff that happens. And this Emerson team is one of those teams that could 100% pull a very similar thing.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't even mentioned the altitude yet on this broadcast, but I mean, you think of, like, I was talking about the Maryland-Harvard game. That game is on camera as an hour and 20 minutes long. When you have to do that at 4,000 feet and you're playing in national time, I mean, that is the kind of things that this current end game is really testing of these college teams. It'll be interesting to see which of them can live up to and which can't.
Just going to jump in here and correct myself as well. Kieran Collier and Mike O'Connor is also a coach for Emerson College Quidditch. Thank you, Tom.
Yep. Awesome. So let's move on to the player we've talked about so much already. Do we have him right now, Nick? Do you know?
We're working on it.
Okay. All right. Well, we can talk a little bit.
You can talk. He's here. You can talk to him. I'm working on the video.
Okay. TJ, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, Ethan. How are you?
I'm good. So, I mean, if you're listening, we his depth and ability to kind of play deep into a tournament. So, how do you guys what is your plan, kind of looking at your roster and looking at what the schedule is going to be to kind of handle a 2-day tournament with this season?
We've been trying out different things at Knights Cup. Teams we played saw that we kept our beaters on one side of the pitch to prepare for a long day. Honestly, our main plan is to just not get into long games, not get into 20-minute games with other teams. A lot of these teams, we feel like we can beat them early and kind of just cruise for the rest of the games. But we're playing for the long game, right? You only have to win 2 games to move on. We want to make sure we don't have any injuries. We saw Katie got hurt at Knights, and that really hurt us. And we just got to play smart. going back and watching film, you think like, oh man, we played such a clean game, and then you go back and watch film, and it's like we did so much wrong. And yeah, we might have still won, but we got to clean it up against teams that are going to punish us more.
So as crazy as this is, like this is your first USQ Cup because you only started like a month before the pandemic hit, right? Like a month or two before. Yeah. So, and it's only your second ever big national tournament alongside going to MLQ champs. So how do you kind of ground yourself heading into such a bigger moment, a bigger Quidditch tournament than like what you've generally played in so far?
I have no clue.
I respect it.
Just going with the flow. We'll see how we feel. Regionals was my first regionals, and I had no expectations for what to expect there, and it was a good experience. But man, 2-day tournaments, brutal. So just taking it easy on your body, and with this being 3 games, I think we play 5 games first day regionals, so this should be a lot easier on everyone physically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's 3 coaches in this chat right now who did not get a regionals this year, and their teams have never played in the 2-day tournament. So it's gonna be interesting all around when we get to nationals. You guys definitely lucky to have gotten that experience. Naresh was talking about how while you all have all these athletes and you're this big team and you won regionals, et cetera, you do have a lot of first-year players, and there are still kind of those growing pains. You do see just some of the fundamentals that are still being developed as is common for first-year players. Which of those younger players have you really seen taking steps even in the last few weeks to the last month that you think will be even bigger contributors for you guys come nationals?
For the guys, I got to say Arthur. A lot of you only saw him, I think, 2 games, day 2 at regionals. And man, he's like come a long way since first joining the team. Obviously, we got a lot of big guys, and he's one of the bigger guys on the team just as far as height, but he's come a long way. He makes great cuts. He's always giving like the max effort on the field, and I'm really I think he's going to show out at nationals. And then other than that, for the girls, I think both our chasers, Kate and Samantha, are going to be huge. I think we don't make it far if we don't implement our girls effectively, and I think that's just straight up. A lot of our games, our guys just we get tunnel vision. We think, oh, we can beat this guy, and it's like you don't need to do that. Or girls are making beautiful cuts. They're always, if you watch any of the film, Kate's always like on this open hoop. Samantha, she can move with the ball. They're really good at it, and then they just don't get the ball. So I think since regionals, we've been working on that a lot, and I think we're gotten a lot better at doing so.
Yeah. So, we obviously played you guys early Knights Cup, and after the game, I remember distinctly kind of Heather kind of pretty aggressively, calling the team together, like, we need to have a talk. What kind of happened in that talk, and kind of what did you adjust to then kind of run off, win those 3 games, including that very convincing win over a very good Rutgers team?
Yeah, we just told them that, or Heather told them, but we were right there, like, we got to clean it up. This is not good Quidditch, basically, is what we said. It's like, if you keep playing like this, we're going to lose. You can hear in the film, there's times where Heather's like, hey, what are we doing? Like, why are we acting like we haven't been here before? And I think that was the main thing. And I think it all started with our loss to UVA. It's like, hey, guys, like, we can easily lose these games. Like, yeah, we've won a lot of games by 100 points, but we can just as easily lose by 100 points if we don't clean it up. And I think that was very eye-opening. And then with the Harvard game, it's just like, hey, you can keep making mistakes and keep making mistakes. A lot of teams we play just want to be in a game where they could win it from us, right? We put Harvard in the position to win that game. Yeah, we made a lot of mistakes, but Harvard won that game. We didn't necessarily lose it, but we don't want to put other teams in a position where they could take a win away from us.
For sure. Awesome. Well, TJ, thank you so much for taking the time. We will see you in a couple weeks at Nationals, and best of luck.
Yeah, sounds good. Good luck to y'all too.
Alrighty, rolling right along to Pool E here, topped by UCLA, along with Michigan, Sam Houston, Brandeis. We called this the Pool of Death. Nick, me and you were doing a lot of speculating in the weeks leading up. We didn't really know what the format was going to be, but it seemed like Sam Houston was going to be a pot 3 team, and it seemed like they were going to want to be the pot 3 team you avoided. UCLA and Michigan didn't get that lucky. What about Sam Houston makes this such a tough pool and makes them kind of the pot 3 team to avoid?
They hit hard. Hayden Boy is a star. I mean, we talk a lot about the chasers from UTSA, right? We talk about this UT Quaffle Corps. Hayden Boy can go toe-to-toe with any one of them, one-on-one, no problem. and he had to beat at the beginning of the year for this team, and now he doesn't, and it's showing. They went from losing games big to these UT team to playing them close in day one of regionals, playing really strong throughout, taking care of the teams that got put in front of them. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to beat these top tier teams, but none of the top tier teams want to see Sam Houston.
Right. So, Kellen, a few weeks back, I was listening to your pod. You were pretty down on UCLA overall. Has you changed your mind on that anymore? And do you think, Nick's over here saying this Sam Houston team is scary. Do you think anybody's scared of the pot one team in this pool?
Well, I mean, first of all, like they are a pot one team, so you have to respect the fact that they earned a great enough record to get to that position in the pool. But one of the, I think, strengths of this UCLA team is the fact that they have such great physicality, even despite the fact that they're in a region, the West region, that's not necessarily known for its physicality, right? If you watch the final of the West Regionals, for example, you'll just see UCLA players all over the pitch just blowing up Cal players. So when it comes to, matching up against Sam Houston, matching up against Michigan, I think that they'll be able to contend with their physicality. That being said, there's not many players on that UCLA team who I think could kind of match the star power that Sam Houston has and Michigan has, right? We already mentioned Hayden Boys on Sam Houston, but Michigan also has Andrew Stevenson, who is an insane ball handler. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the sum is greater than the whole, or the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. But I'm not too convinced that UCLA is going to be able to get out of this pool over Michigan and Sam Houston.
Yeah, and I mean, it's important to recognize that, we can talk pot one, pot two, pot three, but that's not necessarily perception. There's a lot of ways teams get their USQ standings one way or another. Sam Houston has their standing because they play UT and UTSA all the time and don't play anybody else ever. It's not because they're a lesser team. And the reason it's the pool depth, you've got the strongest Great Lakes team. The only reason that Michigan probably doesn't have a regional championship is because Creighton came to their tournament. We've got the West runners-up who split their 2 games at regionals with Cal. They just didn't win the finals. They won the other game. And you've got the third best team in the Southwest, which has always been, our strongest region. All 3 have been 8th man ranked this season. I'm not sure they're all currently sitting in the top 10. I don't believe they are, but they've at least, been on the cusp here and there, on and off. Naresh, how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this is obviously the pool of death where UCLA, Michigan, Sam Houston, there's clearly those teams are going to fight it out, and it's going to be a shame that only 2 of the 3 teams are going to make it into day 2, which is, I mean, that's why it's the pool of death. But I think Brandeis is a team that we're not talking about, and they might not be at that level where they're not competing against Sam Houston, Michigan, and the UCLA's, but this is a well-structured team. They have Tyler Beckman coaching. They have Eli Fighter, who's a rookie for them, who's been balling out for them. They have Vidisha Jha. They have Adrian Koretsky, who has played MLQ practice squad. And again, I don't want to say that they're put these expectations that they're going to compete at that level, but Brandeis is not let me slow down. Brandeis is not the pot 4 team that everyone thinks they are, and this is genuinely a strong team, and that's why I think this is a very strong pool. And overall, I think at the end of the day, it's really hard pressed to not say Sam Houston doesn't win the entire thing. And then I think UCLA, Michigan will be a fascinating matchup, but I just have to go UCLA just because they've played more recently. Michigan, I don't think has played in a while. It's been a couple of months since they've actively gotten official games in. And so that's potentially a storyline to look out for. So the way I see it going down is Sam Houston winning, UCLA, Michigan could probably like flip and flop, but I have UCLA and then Michigan, Brandeis.
Yeah, I think it's all fair. And yeah, I mean, this is a fun Brandeis team. And it's a tough draw. You don't want to be that 4th team in the pool of death where everyone's talking about which of the 2 really strong borderline top 10 teams in the nation are going to come out of. But, it should be a really good experience, playing against these better teams. Serena, anything else you want to add before we jump into our interview about this pool of death?
No, I'm really excited to see the Michigan UCLA game, and also just retweet everything Naresh said about those incredible players on Brandeis. I agree with their pot four, but don't take them lightly.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's move on then to our interview. We have from UCLA their coach Krager. Coach, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
So you've definitely heard us talking about the pool of death. When your team, if your team was watching the draw together, or even just when you were watching the draw, kind of what were your reactions, kind of seeing this pool kind of come together, and kind of your initial thoughts as you go to start preparing for it?
I mean, definitely, like y'all said, Sam Houston State's not a team I wanted to end up as a pot three. In the latest coaches ranking, they were ranked above us. But I did like the fact that we have some diversity of across the regions. We've got one all across different regions, which is nice. It's hard to get out there it's hard to get out there from the West SoCal sometimes to see these other teams. And at the end of the day, I do want my players to get more experience playing against teams from other regions because I'm always looking forward. And we've got a lot of rookies coming, so I'd love to see them know what it's like to really experience these top teams from other regions.
Yeah. So obviously, in recent years, things like HBI have really given programs on the West Coast a little bit more of that opportunity. So what is kind of your plan and preparation to kind of get them? You have those games against Cal, and Cal's, a pretty physical team. But I mean, Sam Houston and Michigan are two of the most physical teams in the country. So kind of how do you get ready for something like that?
Yeah, I mean, my number one priority really going into it is working on injuries and making sure people are safe, right? So going over those fundamentals of getting them ready mentally that these people will be hitting you and they will be hitting hard. And also just making sure having them go over film of looking out for these teams to see who's going hard to really watch out for. I like to try to encourage our players to go out to Lost Boys practice as much as possible to get some experience against club teams. Even throughout the year, we've gone to tournaments where we've gone unofficial to play against specifically club teams, so we have at least some higher intensity play because our college teams are pretty limited out here this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, being a little bit more isolated, there's not a ton of film on you guys. You didn't play that many games, but if you kind of want to highlight some of your, maybe either your stars or even some of your lesser known players that you think will really be factors coming into the Nationals this year.
Yeah, there's a couple players actually coming off injuries that weren't able to make it out to regionals that are attending Nationals. Sean Keane, who keeps and off-ball chases, freshman, who's came in day one with an athleticism and game sense that I was really happy to see and really happy to have. And then Jess Franco, she's another chaser of ours, rookie, sophomore, who has really great hands and is always ready to step up and hit, not afraid to play point. And I think they're really going to be helpful to adding on to our roster that we already had at regionals.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Best of luck at Nationals, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Al. See you soon.
All right, we'll keep rolling along into Pool F, where Mizzou tops the pool as the pot one team, along with Rutgers, Penn State, and James Madison. I believe all three of those teams, besides Mizzou, technically qualify as Mid-Atlantic teams. Not necessarily where they played the regionals this year, but again, another pool with definitely a bit of a geographic cluster to it. Nick, how do you see this pool breaking down?
I mean, this one is tough. I mean, we've talked about how athletic Rutgers is, and how they've played. They definitely had a struggle at their home tournament at Knights Cup. A couple of very close wins and a couple of not so impressive losses. Only one loss, correct? Right, to Maryland. Sorry, that's on me. But they're a team that's playing close games nowadays with a lot of the top tier teams, but haven't quite broken through on that level. That being said, I think they have a opportunity and should maybe be considered the favorites to win this pool. Mizzou is a strong team, a hard-hitting team with some strong beaters. But I think Creighton not Creighton, sorry, Rutgers, long day. Rutgers is very disciplined and can definitely work to neutralize some of Mizzou's tendencies that we've seen on film and have potential to be coming out of this as the one seed out of this pool.
So coming at me from the other side, kind of defend Mizzou as the potential one seed in this pool.
Yeah, I mean, Mizzou is a really interesting team. They kind of give me cup, what was it, 8, whatever cup U of R won. They kind of give me the
11,
same vibes as that
yeah.
U of R team. Thank you, 11. Just because they're one of their primary ball handlers, their keeper, Wallace, he is just like a huge menacing figure who pretty much just drives through every defense. And then on top of that, he has a great supporting cast. Sean McKinnon, Kelsey Novak. I'm sorry, Kelsey Novak is a Creighton player. Sorry, you didn't hear that. But Johnson and Reyes in the beater as a beater pair are really, really strong together. And that's not even mentioning Justin DeWick, who was arguably the best Midwest beater before the pandemic and then got some MLQ experience, right? So there's a lot of really strong beaters on this team. They have really good quaffle players. It's going to be interesting to see how they play since we haven't seen them in action since the Midwest Regional, which was in October, I believe. And on top of that, they weren't even able to completely finish the regional, I believe, due to a lack of numbers. They had to forfeit the final game. So this is a team that could go one of two ways very, very easily. And it's going to be very hard to tell how this pool ends up, like Nick said.
Yeah. I would be interested in going to bat for Penn State a little bit here. Not that I think that they're necessarily going to be a team that can, take down Rutgers or Mizzou, but I like a lot of things the program is doing. They have plenty of depth. That's going to matter a lot when coming to a tournament like this for all the reasons we mentioned, the amount of games, the altitude, etc. They're also doing smart things defensively. They are doing something that I'm surprised more teams haven't done historically, which is they are giving a different defensive look, not game to game, but possession to possession. They will be mixing in zones and mark defense all in the same game. And the thing is, Quidditch teams aren't necessarily the best at identifying. I mean, Rutgers, of course, does have a coaching staff that does not play, and that will help them in that regard when they have to take on Penn State. But a lot of teams don't, and if you are both the captain of a team and actively on the field, sometimes it's hard to identify that a defense is actively changing in the middle of a possession. Will that get Penn State all the way to the promised land of upsetting one of those top teams? I don't know if they have quite the talent level to do that, but I think it's a program that I've kind of been enjoying. Naresh, I'm not going to put you on the spot about Rutgers, but I know you have seen Penn State some of the season, so I'd love to get your take on them.
Absolutely. Penn State, I mean, historically, they're a hard-hitting team. They're super physical, and I think that's what you're going to see this year as well, where we saw it at Knights Cup. We saw it throughout their Great Lakes Regional run, where they played. The only teams they lost to that tournament was Blue Jay, Creighton, and I think there was one other team. I apologize, but they were losing to two of the top teams that finished in that regional. So Penn State is not a team I think anyone should take lightly. They hit hard. Their beaters I think play a lot smarter and they play a lot more physical and smarter than sometimes teams are used to. And I think that's something that can catch teams off guard. So I'm very excited about this Penn State team. Tribe Gallman is a former Drexel player, now transferred into Penn State. Absolute energizer bunny. He can run for days. Love watching Tribe Gallman play. And so I'm very excited to see how this Penn State team plays. But also, that's not to take anything away from James Madison. And I know JMU historically was always the third best team in the Mid-Atlantic. They were super athletic, super long, super physical. And unfortunately, COVID really reduced their roster size a lot. But luckily for them, they were able to joint team with Coastal Carolina. And now they do have a bit more numbers to their depth. And so that I'm not saying that's going to put them over the edge, but they're not a team. They can hit hard. Rutgers has played JMU at Cav Cup a month and a half ago, and that was a hard-hitting game. Number 28 on JMU, I don't know their name, but he's an absolute star. He was hitting in the quaffle game. He was scoring for them in the quaffle game. And then when he realized, hey, our beaters need more help. He put himself at beater and was an absolute menace. So it's one of those things where JMU's right now is stricken with roster issues and just such a young team that overall this pool as a whole, I think, is a hard-hitting team, and it's just going to be a lot of fun to see what team ends up victorious at the end.
Yeah, for sure. So without further ado, we'll move on to our next interview with the Mizzou head captain, Vincent Reyes. So Vincent, thanks for taking the time tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me on here.
Of course. So I'm going to start with a question similar to the one I asked Creighton, where it's been quite a bit of time since you guys last played official games. So kind of how has that affected your kind of mentality, and also what have you guys done to kind of stay sharp through that time coming to nationals?
Right. So obviously, not playing for a while, comes into question with our ability. But before our break, we were one of the teams that was playing Creighton the closest, and so that's something that we hold on to. We held Creighton to their lowest possible point total, to date, other than UT. And so a snitch catch goes the other way, and we're talking about a completely different game, But obviously we lost that game. We know that we took that in. We weren't able to play the championship match. We really wanted to, but we just didn't have the numbers to do it. Just too many injuries. But over the break, we were saying it on the AQD just the other week. A month of time for a college team can completely change how good or the make or break of a team. And we've just been reinventing ourselves for the whole 5 months, and I really took it upon myself to watch our film, take a look at what we can improve on, revolutionize our defense. And so we're going to go up and see Kansas this weekend and have a few games, unofficial games, and scrimmage them. But as far as that goes, we've just completely reinvented ourselves. And I think we're better than we were before.
So, I mean, I feel like in some ways you guys are in a similar spot to Sam Houston, where you're a very solid team that just plays in a small region where the other top teams are also very, very good. Whereas Sam Houston's dealing with UTSA, and Texas, you guys are dealing with Creighton. What does it take to kind of mentally be like, well, it's not just how we're matching up against this team. There's an entire field of teams we're going to see in nationals. There's a good chance we'll never even see Creighton in nationals. So it doesn't matter how good they are, because we are also this good. Kind of, how does that mentality happen? Games where sometimes it's a little trickier to when playing them specifically.
Yeah. So personally, as a head captain, being as into Quidditch as I am, I lurk on AQD. I see everybody saying this and that, and I take in all the Quidditch film I possibly can. So I've seen UT's film, I've seen Texas State's film, I've seen UTSA, I've seen people on the East Coast, I've seen Harvard film, I've seen RPI, I've seen all that stuff. And so I just compare it to when teams play inter-regionally and stuff. I watched all the South regionals and stuff. So when I see people inter-regionally playing, and then I just kind of bring it back to how it all connects back to us. And we went to the Ball Brothers at the very beginning of the year, and we showed out there. And we played a Kansas team that was playing very good at the time, and they came out and beat us. And so from then on, it was this is what we need to do to get better. And in that short month's time from Ball Brothers to when we scrimmaged Kansas at the beginning of the year, we improved that much, And so I just take it as if we're a good Quidditch team here, it doesn't matter where we go, we're going to be a good Quidditch team.
Yeah. So, as a captain of a team that is, fairly isolated in terms of where Quidditch currently exists, everyone who's in this call, we kind of have the benefits of, leading teams in areas where Quidditch is just super supportive. There's tons of teams everywhere. There's tons of people everywhere. So kind of what did it take you guys to kind of work through this pandemic, kind of come back strong again when it was time to play Quidditch again?
Yeah. So for me, it was literally, we had 4 returners. It was me, Sydney Boger, Justin DeWick, and Robbie Wallace. It was us 4. And fortunately enough, we're all MLQ caliber players, and we know how to play Quidditch very well. And once we started recruiting, it just kind of, in the beginning of the year, I lost faith a little bit. I was Mizzou might not have a Quidditch team this year, And And then these 3 girls kind of like fell in our lap, and I was like, okay, we have a semblance of a team now. I was like, we can actually like field an entire roster. It's like it might be just one line. I was like, but we have a roster. And so then from there, we sort of just like started like accumulating a few more players. And so we had this team where we could actually run full scrimmages at practice. And like, I just remember the first day that we were running our defense successfully, it was just like a spark lit under us. It was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, and like one of my greatest accomplishments to like get this team from where we were in the beginning of the year. Like everybody's probably, or I don't know how many people have seen like our Kansas scrimmage film. Like we looked terrible. Like I'm gonna be honest, like we were so bad. But then we come back just 2 weeks later, and we're already a top 10 team. You know what I mean? So it was just really like it gave me what I needed to like reassure myself and be like, okay, we can do this.
That's awesome, and I didn't even have to pay you for the MFQ mention, so I do appreciate that. But so kind of realistic goals going into nationals. What are you guys looking to achieve? You've had so much success. Going from almost not existing to being top 10, being a pot 1 team. So what are you guys hoping to achieve come nationals? What is success for you at nationals?
I don't want to sound cocky, but
we like
I
cockiness on the show.
I think we have the team to make a Final Four. Like I think that we are definitely have a team to, like, despite our numbers, like everybody on this team has the mentality and the toughness and the dedication of what it's going to take to play all 3 games Saturday, play all potentially 4 or 5 games on Sunday. And so I think realistically that we're a team that can make it to the finals come Sunday. And I truly believe that.
Awesome. Well, best of luck at nationals. We're excited to see you guys play, get back on the pitch. So thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All righty. Moving on to Pool G, headlined by Cal Quidditch, the West Regional Champions, with Middlebury, Virginia Tech, and Rochester bringing up it. I think somebody kind of posited Pool of Life concepts here, and I think it was more based on the idea of, Cal is not a Pool of Life team. You don't want to see Cal, but that anybody else could potentially come out of this pool. So, Nick, yeah, I think it might have been you who said it. So do you want to kind of expound on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there was a pot 2 team you wanted to see, Middlebury's probably pretty high up on that list. They've had some roster issues lately with getting people out to tournaments. And obviously a historical program, Quidditch was started there. They do have plenty of players who can play well. It's just a question of how long they're going to be able to play for if they're bringing the roster they had at the MQC Bowl games to nationals. So I really think it's not necessarily that Cal is going to be upset by any of these teams, that any of these 3 teams can make it through with that 2-win day for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about Middlebury, being a bit potentially, at risk, and you see a team like Virginia Tech, who made some waves at Mid-Atlantic. Naresh, what do you think this Virginia Tech team could do?
I think this Virginia Tech it's in a similar position to Maryland, where in the Quaffle game, it's one singular player who really dictates everything, and that's Justin Kramer. Justin Kramer is an absolute star, and no one knows about him. You don't want to go one-on-one with Justin Kramer. He's absolutely one of the best point defenders in the entire country, and I can't wait until more people know about him. Before the pandemic, in the 1920 season, this Virginia Tech team actually beat a very star-studded Virginia team, which is amazing. And then their season kind of derailed because Justin Kramer that year broke his jaw. And then one of your star player goes down. It's really hard to go off of that. But now Kramer's back. They went on a crazy run where they hadn't played the entire season, showed up to Mid-Atlantic Regionals, and made it to the final game against Maryland, right? And Kramer played practically every single minute of every single game. So his conditioning is going to be there. I personally have Virginia Tech as my number 2 team in this pool. I think it's going to be Cal, Virginia Tech. I think Rochester is a very well-coached team. And I just think Middlebury, as much as I really enjoy Middlebury, phenomenal people. I just think with the roster issues that they're showing, it'll be really, really tough to go in to play in that altitude and then to try to get games without that depth. But I'm very high on Virginia Tech, and not that I don't think they beat Cal, but I think Justin Kramer is going to show out nationally, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like a lot of people looked at that Mid Atlantic regionals like, oh, Virginia Tech made it that far, but they made it that far because it was kind of a weird tournament. Everyone had to play a million games. It's like, but what do you think nationals going to be like? Nationals going to be a dogfight. You're going to need to outlast teams, and if Virginia Tech's the kind of team that can do that, then Virginia Tech's going to be a dangerous team. But we spent basically no time because we were kind of talking about who else might come out. Talking about this Cal team. This Cal team is West Region champions. This Cal team is still the defending runner-up at nationals because with players held over from that team. So, Kellen, what do you think this Cal team is going to be able to bring to the table?
Yeah, I think Cal is probably one of the teams in the entire country that I'm most excited to see out of nationals. Just because if they do compete to the level that I think they can get to, there's no reason for this not to be a Final Four, maybe even a finals bound team, right? They have a electric star in Aiden Phipps, who whenever the cloth was in his hands, magic just seems to happen. They have really, really good beaters in Ivan Avalos and Eric Shen. Eric Shen is a first year, but Ivan is a veteran in the beater game now, especially in college. And then one of my sneaky my sleepers on this team too is Dara Guyman. I think that whenever Dara has the qualifier in her hands, she always makes the right decision. And that kind of helps out whenever you have someone who is a little bit, for lack of a better term, erratic or irrational as Aiden, right? So just the combination of all those different things together, I think gives Cal a really, really good shot to go deep, not just on day one, but day two as well.
Yeah, I would push back into that Guyman as kind of a sleeper on the team is kind of crazy talk because I think the entire team only functions because of the things that she's able to do, the way that they're capable of playing off. Like Aiden Phipps is not like a star ball carrier. That is not what he wants to do. You need other people on your offense who can all play very comfortably with the ball in your hand in the way that Dara can, and it opens up the roster abilities, the ability to get more minutes out of someone like Avalos. Avalos has played in national championship games and has played well in national semifinals. I mean, none of this is new to some of the players on this team. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how things play out for this Cal team. Like you said, this is a team who's getting a very nice pool draw. I don't think they're going to get any challenges on day one. I think they're going to put up some really nice tiebreakers, probably have a pretty high seed, probably not have a very difficult round of 16 game. That puts you pretty quickly in the quarterfinals. And I mean, anything can happen at that point, especially if they're facing teams that are more tired because they came from more strenuous routes. Nick, what do you think the ceiling on this Cal team is?
I think this Cal team is a potential Final Four team. I think that's a big push for them. I do think that they are a bit erratic as a team. As a whole, they tend to, if they run into a team that has a bit more discipline and a bit more focus, they could struggle a little bit more. But if everything's clicking for this team, there's so many athletes. They play so well out in the field with a quick-paced game that they're going to be hard to stop. It's going to be very similar to the Cal that made the finals run, which was never a half-court team. It wasn't. And this team, if they come up against a team that they can run on and move and use that athleticism, they're gonna have a great chance to make a Final Four push.
I personally don't understand how you could say that defending just chucking up half-court floaters wasn't a full-on half-court.
Hey, for sometimes it works. Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
It's very true. All right, let's move on to our interview. We have Dara Guyman on with us. So Dara, thanks so much for taking the time tonight.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No,
also, high praise. Thanks for that too.
Oh no, of course. You've earned it, and your team's earned it as well. First question I'm going to ask is something similar to what I asked Krager when they were on earlier. You guys have been very isolated this season. There was no HBI or anything that brought teams out to you guys, and you didn't get the chance to travel. So how do you kind of prep for seeing teams other than the kind of few teams you've seen almost on repeat so far this season?
Yeah, playing out in the West is a little tough. We play the same teams again and again, and we travel to play them anyways. But I guess in the meantime, like we've been trying to get scrimmages or unofficial games with community teams. So we've been playing a little bit with Breakers, who have been extremely a good match for us, at least a good test to see how we match up with bigger players and more competitive players or players who've had more experience.
For sure. So I know it was 3 years ago at this point, but as we mentioned, you guys are technically the defending second place team. And some of your players, I apologize, I don't know if you were on that team. Were you on that team?
I was on that team.
Okay. So you, as well as a few other players, were there. So does that weigh on you guys at all coming to nationals? Like any level of expectations that, hey, we've done this before, you know, why not us? Why couldn't we do this again?
Well, of course, we're shooting to get the championship this time. That's always the goal. But coming out of COVID, we expect this to be a little bit of a building year. And even the year that we got canceled, the COVID year that got canceled before nationals, that was supposed to be a building year too. And we did better then than we thought we were going to do that year. And so that's the plan again this year, is to just roll through. It is hard though, I guess, not really knowing the competition outside, but we're just doing the best we can with sights set high.
So you mentioned it being a building year. So talk to us about some of the, you know, younger players who are building, maybe even in the months since we saw them at regionals, and that are going to be a factor coming in nationals.
Yeah, for sure. We do have maybe third of our roster is a rookie roster for this season, but our rookie recruits have been incredible as well. I would like to highlight Luca Menezes. He's been our starting keeper and has just been a fantastic asset to our team. He can read the field and he's quick. He's got the footwork to beat a lot of people. And he's starting to actually get excited and learn the game, which is just amazing to watch happen.
Yeah, that is awesome. And yeah, he has been very impressive at regionals as well. You know, for a long time, the West has been waiting to have a national championship. This finally, the time has come. What does it kind of, because obviously, you know, people on the East Coast they're going to get whiny about it, as they do, because this is kind of how the world works. But kind of what does it mean to your team, other college teams in the area, to, you know, have that kind of more local opportunity to host a national championship?
I think it's a huge deal for the West to have nationals, especially because a lot of times travel is such a big factor for the West teams. I guess my example point was last time we maybe had a nationals when UCLA was the regional champion, but opted out of nationals. That was unheard of. So to have something on this side that is catering to us just a little bit it just means a lot to have that kind of, I don't know, I guess just to have Quidditch expand to this side as well.
No, of course. No, it matters. Where nationals is always has and always will matter. And I don't think there's any shame in saying that. But again, Dara, thank you so much for taking the time. Best of luck to Cal. We're all really excited to see them play teams from other regions in a few weeks. So take care.
Thanks for having me.
So we promised you, if you stayed all the way to the last pool, we would have our other marquee top 10 matchup to preview. And I think this one is the more marquee one, if I do say so myself. Pool H headlined by number 9 Virginia as the pot 1 team, and then number 3 UTSA as the pot 2 team, with UNC and Vermont rounding up the pool. I have plenty of things I'm excited to say about UNC, but I want to clear the field and just clear the lane one-on-one, UTSA versus Virginia. Who wants to talk about it first? I'll give the floor to anybody who wants to talk about it first.
I'll definitely take a stab.
Go ahead.
Perfect. All right. So one of we were talking about how Pool E might be like the pool of death earlier. I think that Pool H in particular is my favorite pool, or the one that I'm looking most forward to. And it's specifically because of this UTSA Virginia matchup. Now, all season long, we've seen how good UTSA is, But at the same time, they've really only been able to go up against UT, or not only been able to, but they've only really struggled against UT. So I'm really excited to see how they go up against a team that's outside of the region. More specifically, I'm really looking forward to not only the matchup in the Chaser game, because you have, on UVA side, you have Chet Kleppen, Zane Siddiqui, Byron Blue, all these, the list goes on and on. But then you also have an incredibly strong qualifier line on the UTSA side as well. You have the Stewarts, the Blackwoods, the Christian Cortezes, and on top of that, I would really love to see the Rollins, or like a beater line just led by Hannah Rollins go up against a beater line led by Bradley Hines. Like, there's just such an even matchup in almost every single position group. I'm just so excited to see who can end up on top in this one.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention how hyped the Seeker matchup is going to be, because I think really quietly UVA has a very, very competent seeking game. I don't want to. It is Chin, right? Who seeks for them? I know
It's
it was
Alex Cruz. They just
but
had.
he was wearing a Chin jersey at Knights Cup. Got it. I apologize. He's super athletic, and he's crazy athletic in the qualifier game, but his seeking was super on point in the Knights Cup as well. Caught very quickly in the game we played against them. In the RPI game, he didn't start, but once he subbed in, he caught very, very quickly. And then obviously, Kellen's talked plenty about Jay as a seeker this season. I think he has him as one of his top 2 or 3 in the country, and I think very, very well deserved. So every position group, we're getting an interesting game. X's and O's though, Nick, how do you think these things will play out with, the UVA running the zone they do, and then UTSA kind of running their 2-2?
I mean, how can UVA run the same zone they put out at Knights Cup? It was shown that a team that sees that tape knows how to break it down. That's just, it is what it is. They'll have to make adjustments, I think, coming into nationals. It's not that they don't have the physicality to run a lacrosse kind of help style zone. It's that a lacrosse help style zone leads to so many opportunities for teams that know what they're doing. So I'm curious to see if they adjust that. I expect them to adjust that. They are a smart team that does know what they need to do. I do think that UVA's depth, especially in the beating game, will help them a little bit in this matchup. I think our question this whole year has been for UTSA is anyone but Bradley Hines stepping up to really show that they have taken that leap to the next level. And chasing depth and one beater can get you real far, but I don't necessarily know if it can get you to a national title. I think that if UTSA has taken that step since regionals in the beating game, then they should be favored. But I'm very excited to see what happens here. This is going to be a matchup that I think you're going to see crowds around for sure.
Yeah, because the thing is, we've mentioned the potential concerns about UTSA's beating, and UVA has at times, like Knights Cup, brought Weideman and Rollins out together and had success with it. And if 2 of them can have success against UTSA, they're going to be able to put out some really dangerous quaffle lines in that, and they're really going to be able to pick apart that UTSA zone. And 2-2s, we all know, without bludger control, they definitely struggle more. They're still hard to break down, but they definitely struggle more. And UVA, this team knows how to pass, especially when Chet Kleppen is on the field. I said I wanted to talk about this UNC team though as well, so I'm going to go back and talk about them. This is a smart team. They're playing multiple defenses, which is something we've talked about before. I saw kind of a 2-2 hybrid that they rolled out at South Regionals. I also said them playing hoop zone against Florida in the finals. And Monowar, their kind of star player who plays point and also does a good amount of ball handling, is an absolute star. Naresh, I know you wanted to kind of hype up Monowar as well a bit, so I'll pass the floor over to you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm watching Monowar play. It's just so much fun. He's the heart and soul of that team, and he makes things happen for that team. And this UNC team is super young. From watching them, they're getting all of that experience that obviously the COVID year that they lost, getting all of that experience in a couple months is a hard task, but this team has done it. On offense, they look very disciplined. They look structured. They look like they know what they're doing, and that's half the battle right there. Monowar by himself is phenomenal. Like I said, heart and soul of the team, and I just can't wait until more people know who this person is and actually have a chance to see him play, because he's a star, and I'm very excited to see him get props on the national stage.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's going to be such a fun part of this nationals overall because, I mean, if you're anything up to a junior in college, you have never played at a nationals. And if you're a senior in college, if you did a typical 4 years, is obviously examples, you only played all the way back in your freshman year. So basically all of these stars on all of these teams have never had a chance to shine on a national stage. And it's going to be super, super cool to see how that all plays out. Vermont, obviously, sitting at the bottom of the pool, a younger team kind of in a rebuilding year after they had that great senior class right before COVID hit. So it'll be fun to see what they do. But Nick, I don't think you see them particularly breaking through.
Yeah, I think that this is a team that is going to be excited to go to their first nationals. Right, that was a huge deal for them in the 2020 season. By beating BU in that one game, they clinched their spot to nationals, and they were so excited. So they finally get to pay off on that 2 years later. And while I don't necessarily see them pushing for anything in this pool, I think they're going to learn a lot about what it takes to play at this level. And with the addition of that D2 tournament, they're going to be able to make I think they're going to be able to play through that very, very well.
Yeah, and the roster kept getting bigger over time. Their captains, Emma Pohl and Richie Abbott, are both very solid players. So it's good to kind of see that growth as the season goes through, and hopefully they get a good experience at nationals. But yeah, so let's bring in our last interview, Virginia Captain Hannah Rollins. Hannah, thank you both so much for taking the time and for waiting to be the last interview, even though you're on the East Coast.
It's okay. You had to save the best for last, right?
That's exactly what we were thinking here. It had nothing to do with the order of the pools.
Of course not. Let me know if you can hear me. We just stopped practice, actually, so let me know. I'm just on the side of the field. So yeah, let me know if you guys can hear me or not.
You're coming through perfectly fine.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So you guys had a busy semester with a lot of ups and downs. You guys played a ton of games. My team did something similar, so I definitely kind of get the vibe. So what have you guys kind of taken away from the games you've gotten in the past couple of months?
Yeah, definitely. We've tried to play as many different teams as we can just to kind of get experience, but also learn from the teams. Like, Ethan, we thought your point keeper was very smart. So we're constantly evolving and trying to learn from the teams, because as one of the only in the top 10 right now, I think like one of 3 teams that has a we don't have a non-playing coach. We have to constantly evolve as a team, and it's really like a whole team thing. And we have a lot of strong seniors, such as Chet Kleppen, my co-captain Alex Wiedemann, and then our non-playing right now captain Allie Chin, that we're just constantly looking at the game and seeing what our matchup is going to be like. Yeah.
So offensively, I mean, I think multiple of us in here watched Cavalier Cup, watched the way you guys were moving the ball, watched the way you went on that crazy 9-0 run. You blew out UMD, and we were all like the highest of the highest. And then at Knights Cup, there were games where the offense's wheels just completely came off. Specifically, the game where you guys scored once in 20 minutes against RPI before Snitch came on pitch. So, I mean, those two tournaments are like 2 to 3 weeks apart. And yes, I know Chet didn't play much in the second one, but even so, that's not the difference of a player. So, how are you guys trying to work to be more like the team we saw at Cavalier Cup and less like the one we saw at Knights Cup?
Yeah, I mean, to say it in like a plain sense, we just have to finish. We have to drive and dish and finish. We have such strong players. Like, we have, I would say, one of the biggest steps of USQ college teams right now. We have such strong players that make these goals in practice. We just have to put it into the game, and we're very excited to do that in Salt Lake. So yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned that depth. So I mean, we know your top line players, like everybody does, but if you guys are going to make a deeper run, if you guys are going to be that better team that we saw in Cavalier Cup, what players should we be focusing on, to be really making waves?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've talked about him a little bit, or I've heard talk about him, but Andrew Bowman, he's one of our third years. He's up and coming, going to be a great, probably captain next year. And then for our female chasers, we have a lot of just all of them are so good. Like I still feel like USQ is kind of male dominated, and there's a lot of like star male players like Chet on our team or like TJ on Maryland. However, our girls show up, they can score and they can hit, and I think that's kind of something that is going to distinguish us at Salt Lake if we're able to put that into practice. So we have actually my sister on the team. Emma Rollins is one of the female chasers, and then we have Chet's sister Anna Kleppen, and then we have two great other female chasers, Alex Rosenthal and Rachel H. Her last name's kind of hard to say. So yeah.
I think that's also why it's awesome that you guys can play yourself and Alex together as a very competent B Corp. In the top 10, really only you and Tufts are the ones who kind of tend to be able to bring out those looks and be successful with it. And it is really cool to see things like that as the game continues to evolve. So the last time you guys were at Nationals, remind me, were you on that team, Hannah?
I was. I think I got like 1 minute of playing time, but I had the time of my life. I love just the whole organization, and I'm glad that it didn't perish over COVID. So glad to be back.
For sure. So you guys played those 2 games against Texas State. They were super, super good games. They were kind of like some of the highlights of that tournament. You guys obviously right off the bat, you draw probably very similar to that tournament, the second best Southwest team, a very strong team. So are you guys kind of looking forward and kind of want to kind of step up to the opportunity to play another Southwest team in your pool like you did last time?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the problems with my current team, to be frank, is that going off of Cav Cup, we thought we were unbeatable. Like we were so confident in ourselves, and we have to be that going into Salt Lake, but we also need to see how these other teams play. We haven't played against kind of like a different style of a team, and we've always talked about Texas, and I'm glad we get to play them on the first day. So hopefully when we make it far on Sunday, we can play again and see how that goes.
Yep, that's definitely Harvard's plan too, facing UC on day one. So we're all in the same boat, right, perfectly in line. Awesome. Well, and thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sure you want to get out of practice, so we will let you go. But best of luck at Nationals, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, thank you guys. I just want to say thank you to all of USQ and Gameplay, especially Christian Barnes. I think he's kind of like held down the fort for a lot of us. So just want to shout him out there for a second.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
No,
thank you.
No problem. But yeah, Gameplay had a Herculean effort this year because the numbers were definitely changing left and right. Nick and I were trying to follow those numbers in the week leading up to the selection, and we had a lot of different numbers. So I'm glad we were able to be delivered this tournament. We do appreciate all the work they do. That's just about going to wrap it up for us. I would do picks, but I feel like a lot of people are going to be put into awkward positions based on their own teams. And, you know, we don't need everyone to say that UT is going to win nationals. So we hope you enjoy. We've got a lot of coverage to come. I know Kellen has 2 podcasts in the works, he said already, that are on the editing stage. Kellen just said that Creighton's got it. So apparently I didn't know what I was talking about, but he hasn't said that in his ranking. So in my defense, he keeps ranking Texas #1. But yeah, check out Kellen's content. Fast Break, it will also be, I'm sure, be bringing out some content in the days leading up to Nationals. We're so excited to see all of you in Salt Lake City for Nationals. It's been such a long time. There's nothing better than a big Quidditch tournament, and I think we're all very much looking forward to it. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you to Fast Break for collaborating with us on this, and we will see everybody in 2 weeks in Salt Lake City. Have a good night.